team. And we're live and ready to go.
All right. Call to order the April 11th work session at 6:01 PM. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Denning?
Here.
Ms. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Ms. Lomatch?
Yes.
Mr. Maxfield?
Here.
Mayor Williams?
Move to excuse.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
City Manager, any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No, sir. Ready to roll.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Sorry, you guys did
They already
first.
did, yeah.
My apologies, yeah.
I
All
got
those
it.
in favor, sorry.
Aye.
City Manager, time for monthly updates.
Thank you, sir. We'll turn it over to the police and fire departments for some brief updates, primarily surrounding the eclipse, I believe. So I'll turn it over to Chief Robinson first.
He said brief. That's not, middle name is brief. I do want to mention one thing before I start on that, is you had a surplus list about police cruisers that came in, you guys signed off on. Unfortunately, there was some typo errors on that, and we had to redo that. So next month, you're going to see that again, so I just want you to be aware that's coming down the pike. It's no changes to it, it was just one letter or two off on the typo there. So it will be back in your face. One other thing I want to say before I say something about the eclipse is, if you haven't noticed or known, that the marijuana thing is in full force at this point, and I just want to give you a couple of Ohio Revised Codes, if you want to go look and see exactly what your police department can do at this point, which is actually, we can do a little bit more than what we thought we could be able to do. So 3780.36 and 3780.99, if you're looking at ORC, you'll be able to see what we can and cannot do, and how that's going to be done for us as far as moving forward. The eclipse. I just want to tell you that Major Jackson was placed in charge of our planning, and she, along with Sergeant Crickler, did an excellent job with personnel planning as well as the traffic control, as we know was going to be a bear. And I want to thank all the officers that came out on their off time and made the event go off with very few hiccups. Major Sturgeon and I had the hardest job, though. Just kidding. We just held down the fort at 1791, and I made hamburgers and hot dogs for people to feed them at the gates. And yeah, it's a tough job, but someone's got to do it. It's me, apparently, all the time. Must be. Miss Lomax knows I can cook a mean hot dog.
And I would have delivered them if you'd asked.
I know you would have. I know you would have. But I think what I really want to say thank you to, and the biggest shout out actually should be out to the service department, because they did all the heavy lifting. We were just doing this with our hands, get people to move. But as far as the work that they did, the service department, beforehand, during, and after, those are the folks that did all the heavy lifting. So I think they should get the most round of applause if you were giving one out to the department in the city for them and the work that they did. So we appreciate them very much. I want to say the last thing I want to say is that we were during the event. I've been saying from 0700 to 018 or 1800 rather. We had 22 calls for service, which is not bad. That's a pretty normal day for us. And we had, amazingly, an outstanding 0 accidents that day. So we must be doing some really good directing the traffic. There were that many thousands of cars coming out of the city that day. So we appreciate all the effort that everyone's made as a team. And it was a team effort from the city building all the way to every department, including the fire department. I know that he's going to say some stuff about the fire department, but trust me, all they did was eat. But anyway. I do want to mention one more thing. I think that Mr. Brown had an incident with with the library at his residence. I know that we're still looking at investigating into that because you have some information. Of course, we have the light cameras that we can use to that source. We're still investigating that. And if anybody's out there listening, if you have anything that if you know about or see or know of anything about this, please get with us at police@riverside.oh.gov or Crime Stoppers. And we will certainly use those tips to our advantage.
And I have some further information to give you about that after the meeting. So.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
What were those Ohio revised codes that you cited?
Okay, it's 3780.36 and 3780.99.
Thank you.
Yes.
Fire?
Yeah, so just two real quick updates for us. The lieutenants that were sworn in here last month are on the road. They're assigned, all three of them currently assigned to Station 6. So this is the first time in a long time we've had that front-end leadership at that firehouse. Already getting a lot of accolades from the guys as well as the battalion chiefs on the additional accountability and consistency amongst the shifts and daily operations. So it's money well spent. It's really fixed the hierarchy up to this point. The other thing is today we submitted for the federal SAFER grant for full-time staffing. So with the approval of Mr. Roush, we went after 6 full-time positions, which are fully funded 100% for 3 years. And then after that, we'll be in a position to where we can just encumber those funds annually as we continue to grow. Most of the planning for the eclipse for the fire department had to do with upstaffing. We divided the city in a north and a south district, and we staffed each station equally. We brought in staffing at 7:30 at night on Sunday, and we kept them till 7:30 at night on Monday. And during that time, we did 37 details. We had 18 people working Sunday night, 20 people, counting me and one of the battalions, were in the city's EOC, just managing operations along with the police chief and the city manager. Twice on Monday, we had 3 medic units on the road, and once we had all 4 medic units on the road. So none of that would have been possible without the upstaffing. We only provided mutual aid twice during that period, so the city of Dayton, Fairborn, and Beaver Creek and Huber were all upstaffed as well. And this is a 3.5-month planning process that went into this. Fortunately, the projections, the actual numbers came in a lot lower, so it didn't tax our system, but had it, we were in a good position. Like the chief said, the road department knocked this one out of the park for us. Did a lot of work for us, like they always do. That and the PD, and then Josh, and bringing all the city departments together. So we had a really good plan, and it was a really good practice run for future events. So.
Any other questions for Chief? Cool. Thank you, gentlemen, for the update. I'll tag on to that with some thoughts, too, about service, since they would typically report out this month as well. And I do want to follow on and echo their comments. To me, it's telling because whether people believe it or not, we actually don't coordinate these comments a whole lot. So the kudos they just gave to the service department were spontaneous. I was going to do the same thing. And I think that really speaks to the level of service that we get out of the folks from the service department, in particular Kevin Miller, who has been working quite a lot extra while we've been in the process of filling our director position. And I really need to give Kevin and Andrea here at City Hall and all of the crews just a huge shout out. They were the ones who really were out doing a lot of the preliminary work with the snow fencing and trying to kind of block people off. My understanding is we actually did have somebody that tried to park in a restricted area, so those efforts were worth it. And as far as trying to keep an eye on the parks, especially over the weekend, and just to create that touch point and then clean it all up afterwards. And to do it with a smile and in good spirits and help direct that traffic, both going and coming, is just a testament to their overall level of service and dedication to our community. So huge thanks to the service department, and also to Chief Miller and all the BCs, Chief Robinson, Major Jackson, and everybody at the department, because as they said, it was a several month-long effort to try to plan ahead for the what-ifs. I know we got questions about, the emergency declaration and everything else. Again, our job is to prepare for that worst case, and I think that the overall smoothness of the day is evidence to, A, the level of preparation that our folks put into it, but also I want to give the community a lot of credit. I think that driving around that day and in helping, Katie take pictures and just sort of document the events of the day, you could tell that the roads were lighter. It was not a typical day, and I want to give the community a lot of kudos for making the space for visitors to come to this part of town and to enjoy this event and to give each other, again, that patience and grace so that we didn't have really any major incidents to speak of. That's what we planned for. That's what all the hard work goes into so that people don't notice. And it feels like a pretty typical day, which I think it did by and large. And so, again, everybody did a tremendous job. And so I just want to thank everybody. And we have some acknowledgement that we're planning for employees. So I'll keep you posted on that in the coming weeks. So.
I have two comments. One is, plan your work, work your plan. Y'all did that spectacularly. Number two is, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So we also did that, and I think everybody did an awesome job. I was sitting over at the haunted house all day to make sure that people didn't come hang out where they weren't supposed to. And it was great because we just got to work on the haunted house instead of having to deal with anything stupid. So
Right.
I think that everybody did an awesome job. I know that there were some not so great comments on Facebook saying, well, why did we bother? But the answer is because we bothered so that what happened, that we didn't have any issues and that we didn't have any major traffic problems and that we work well with our neighbors. And I think that's important for everybody to understand.
I think we need to not fail to thank our communication director because she kept the community well informed of where to go and not go and posted all the maps and all the information, and it made people stay home.
Mhm.
And that was a good thing. And she kept putting it out there, even the day of the event. So it was a team. It was an awesome team. And I've heard nothing but positive remarks, except on Facebook.
That's a tough crowd anyway, so. But at any rate, again, thanks again to the chiefs, to the staff, to Katie. It was a job well done, and I think it really sets the right tone and tempo for, as these special events pop up going forward, we have a good working rhythm to work from, so. Moving on through the agenda, with council's permission, I'll actually move ranked choice voting, that discussion, to the second item, since we have a presenter here to talk about CIC. So if that's okay, I'll invite Mr. McHugh to come up to the podium and give us a little bit of an update on the Community Investment Corporation.
Yes, thank you, council. Thank you, Josh. Yes, we are at the point of bringing forth the council some legislation. The city has had a CIC, as probably you all know. It's been in existence for a while, but sometimes it's also been, the corporation has been dormant. I went back through some notes and found a 2005 and 2018, I think, where there was some discussion about it. But I'm frankly pleased that, because I think it's a good thing for the city to be considering this. But in order to get it truly operational now, there have been some changes in the law. So we're going to need a few things from council. One will be, we need to really amend the articles of incorporation. We need to upgrade them a little bit, and these things are both going to be, council will act on it first, then the actual CIC board will, the trustees there, they'll actually operate on it, but before they do, there'll be a few other things that have to occur. The same thing occurs with the Code of Regulation, and the Code of Regulations is really the operating instrument of your CIC, your Community Improvement Corporation, I should say that. But what that has, and just for discussion, so when you see this, you'll see what we've got is the Board of Trustees. But in this particular situation, we have, and by law, we have to have a certain percentage, but the mayor, city manager, Director of Community Development, Finance Director or designee, and a representative of the Planning Commission. So there will be some, council will have to approve that in order to, create the board, because previously, earlier event times, there was some different makeup of the board. So council, but that's up to council, and so working with the manager, he has suggested that this be a pretty heavily weighted city board, since it'll be handling city business. So, which makes a lot of sense at this point. Circumstances change down the future, that can always be changed. But for right now, that would be the makeup of it. And then it's actually, once council approves that and we get the CIC up and running, then those individuals will then approve their own code of regulations, and within that, there are also officers. So they have the officers of the corporation, because it is a corporation. It's actually under Chapter 17 of the Ohio Revised Code, which is the corporate section statute for Ohio. It's just that this one is 1724. That deals with community improvement corporations or economic development corporations for counties. So that's just the way it's set up. So then the next thing we'll have to do is you actually, effectively appoint, though the appointment of the board of trustees is set forth in the code. So it'll be those individuals. And the one thing we don't know is, who the board rep for the planning, and whether the finance director will serve or a designee. I mean, that's something to be discussed. Then at that point, the trustees, they have a few things they have to adopt a conflict of interest statement, that they all have to agree not to get in situations, the obvious situation, one of them owns a piece of property and they try to sell it to the CIC through the city, obviously, clearly a conflict. So that's just something, and that's one of the requirements. One thing I didn't put on here too, but the auditor came out in the last 2 years with a requirement that community improvement corporations have to have their own public records policy and regulations. Used to always be that cities, traditionally, we would follow the city. Whatever the city's policy was, the CIC being a agency of the city for economic purposes, they follow it. But the auditors requested and has asked, so we're going to have to throw that in and make sure that they adopt their own policy, public records policy, which we'll draft. And then finally, we have to, it appears that in research we haven't located a tax ID, so we're going to apply for a tax ID and then submit that. And my suggestion is what we have here is that the board then would appoint Deborah Aldrich, who is she is a paralegal with our firm, so that she can handle that. She can do the actual paperwork on the tax filings and take care of that, since I don't want to put that on the trustees or the officers of the CIC. And the last thing really that will have to be added is, at least my recommendation is that if you form a CIC, you ought to create or at least apply to make the CIC or qualify it as a 501c3 corporation. That is that is a fairly extensive process, just because IRS has a lot of regulations and a lot of requirements. But if it's done, it gives the CIC the benefit that if someone, because I've seen it happen, if a landowner just simply wants to donate land to the CIC, it gives an encouragement to them. They can take a tax claim on it, right? And the CIC gets it at effectively a zero price. And so it makes for ability for the CIC to operate, redevelop properties, and things of that nature quite easily. I mean, certainly encourages, and we want to encourage, property owners who have pieces of property that they simply no longer want, they may have paid too much, or they just simply are not able to deal with anymore, and maybe they have to try to sell and they can't, that in those situations, people will donate. And so you want to encourage that, but in order to do that, you really need to be a tax-exempt organization. And then you have to, file the necessary paperwork annually to reports and things that year. But in my opinion, it is worth doing that regardless of the extra work that may entail, and it's not that much extra work. So I can also address, I don't want to, go into basic things that CIC can do for the city, but, again, I wanted to kind of, because I think that may be covered at some later point, but do you have questions? Because I'd be glad to address questions first, or, because I'm not sure.
I think the only thing I would say is just clarify that it works independently of the council.
It does. It
Yes.
works independently. And one of the ways it can work independently is that it can acquire, let's say, a distressed property. It can work with and negotiate, and has the ability to negotiate in confidence in situations that council really can't. To have houses rehabbed. I've got the examples I know of another CIC that has been very successful acquiring tax distressed properties effectively for the cost of the filing, and then they work with their list of contractors and those individuals, and they've been successful selling them. And they've done that both for residential property and for residences. So the CIC really can serve, do a number of things that can certainly help. I've seen the CIC in one community, what we did was they had a grant, and they were sort of gap financing for new businesses. And over time, I think they ended up probably about 75% more money than they originally were given with the grant, but they were able to take people who were starting new businesses that had other financing but just didn't have enough financing to close that gap that they needed. They would make loans, and they would get paid off. And they would be, one of the benefits is they could reduce the interest rate too. They could be lower than a bank, but still cover their cost. And you end up, creating businesses in your community and employment. So that's another opportunity that a CIC can do that the city really can't do. I mean, you're not structured to take those kind of obligations on. So, yes.
The typical way I think of a CIC is, buying up properties, rehabbing them, and selling them. Is selling the properties always like the end goal? Is there a role for a CIC to maybe operate some sort of?
CICs can buy property, sell property, rent property, operate property,
Okay.
manage property. That's what makes them very attractive as a economic development tool. I mean, they are another tool. They don't supersede, the staff or the manager in terms of the city's operation, but for those particular things, they have some abilities to do things like that can be attractive. And one of the other things is that when CICs, one of the other benefits too, is that if they let's say they acquire a house, or they have I've seen this where cities will have a piece of property they just don't need. It's surplus property. They're spending time cutting grass and that's about it. The city may have paid $2,000 for it years ago. They can transfer it to the CIC. By statute, the CIC can then market it, whatever is the best economic way of dealing with it. Ultimately, in that situation, normally it's to sell it, but it could be something else. But the profit on that, one, it's a way to get the city reimbursed. Two, it provides extra funds to the city. And three, it provides an ability to leave some of the money for dealing with it with the CIC. So the idea is that you start the CIC, and over time, you want, like a corporation, you want to try to see the fund balance increase, just like running a private corporation. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who did you say the officers of the CIC are from our
Who would they
organization?
be?
Yeah.
They could very well be, some of them could be members of the trustee, but a lot of times they may be separate individuals who
You gave a list,
operate.
the mayor, the city manager.
Oh, those,
finance-
those are trustees, I'm sorry.
Trustees, okay.
Yes.
So who are
Sure.
those again?
Yes, let me give you that list.
And that's a proposal currently.
Okay.
So we can amend this if we
Yes.
need to, but the suggestion is.
Okay.
This is just a suggestion. Mayor, city manager, director of community development, the finance director or finance director's designee, and a member of the planning commission or planning commission representative.
Okay.
So,
So community development director and the city manager are the same person?
Mm.
No?
No,
Oh,
not as
Naya.
community development director, yeah. You're good.
Okay, never mind. That's what I was, in my head, I was thinking economic development,
Yeah. Yeah,
not
what-
community. Too many words in my head at one time. Okay, that's what I was gonna say, is that Naya should be on it.
Yep.
So that
Yeah.
solved that. Next thing. You're talking about making the bylaws, and like you said, like, the articles of incorporation, so that would be kind of homogenous with the bylaws of the CIC, right?
well, you have the articles of incorporation, which, just really start the whole process, which need to be amended because, again, the original ones date back a number of years. On top of that, then the code of regulations or bylaws, those are effectively the operating, who are the members who are the directors or the trustees? Who are, officers, do you need a president or chair? Things of this nature. How you call a meeting, things of that nature.
Right.
That's kind of the,
Because if you have those, you have your bylaws, you have your conflict of interest statement,
Yes.
your articles of incorporation, then you have everything you need to file for your 1023 to become a nonprofit. So
Mhm.
that should be a pretty quick it takes like 6 to 9 months for the IRS to approve it,
it does, yeah.
because you can't, I don't believe you'd be able to use the 1023 EZ to speed this up with the way that it's structured. So, I don't think
No.
that part is going to be hard to do.
Yeah.
Um,
It's,
and
it's
this-
just the number of, it's
It's a lengthy document.
a lengthy document.
Um,
I like questions answered.
And is this an S corp, C corp? How did we structure it previously?
This is, it really becomes a nonprofit corp.
Okay,
That's the intent of it.
yeah, because it's not an LLC, so I was just.
No,
wondering.
no, it's not an LLC.
So if we're set up as.
No, it's kind of its own creation under the Ohio Revised Code.
Well, with the IRS, how is it structured?
Well, with IRS, it would be treated somewhat more like a C corp probably, but it's going to be treated, if it makes, being nonprofit, but, if it makes money, it's going to have to report that, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, but, because it is in the business, and so nonprofit or not, if you make money, you need to report it.
Well, I don't want to talk too far out of school too, but the state auditor also comes into play here, I believe, as well,
Oh,
right?
I'm
As
sure.
far as
Yeah,
the
oh, yes, they
CIC's
will.
books are audited by the state. They're
Okay.
separate from the cities.
Mhm.
So there's a whole nother set of, regulation there.
Okay, last question. How is this funded?
That's an excellent question.
Initially.
So we have, and just in talking with Steve, and I think based on some of his past practice or experience in other areas, there's a variety of things that we can do to capitalize this. I think we don't necessarily have to have that question answered before we start down this path. But I think you've kind of seen the gamut, right? From anything from councils appropriating money for the CIC to transfers of property, things of
Yes.
that nature.
Yeah. Ultimately, I've seen, back in the day, you could get grants Unfortunately, I don't think that's realistic anymore, but, normally any more transfer of property is a way, especially if it's a transfer of property that has some cash flow that gives an ability to provide some working capital, because, the CIC will need some working capital, but the goal here is, as I say, over time, you want the CIC to be successful and effectively be profitable. Because if it's profitable, it's doing a good economic job for the city. You're taking property that maybe was underproducing and underperforming, and you got it performing, or you got a house that is vacant, and now you got a family living in it. So, and that's one of the things too. If you get into the residential aspect of it, you can determine, kind of a priority that the CIC can make a determination about really who they want to sell it to. Because maybe you don't want to turn everything into a rental. Maybe you want to have a family, maybe a family with a criteria that, if you stay there for certain, you get a discount on some. There's all sorts of parameters that, that a city council and the CIC can do. It really depends on what is the economic goal of the city, which then is translated to the CIC. And one of the benefits of having a heavily weighted city member CIC is you know what the goal is here. So.
Last question.
Sure.
Since this is a wholly separate entity outside of the city, correct? Like, it has its own FEIN number. So in case of damages or a financial situation that would render the CIC bankrupt, who's at fault?
Well, in terms of two things. One, it is separate. I wouldn't say it's wholly separate, because the city council will designate it as its economic development arm. So there is a connection there. But in terms of liability, if one of the things is the CIC can borrow money, or their deals are separate. I mean, unless the city is involved in the transaction, and that's one of the benefits, transfer it to the CIC, let the CIC deal with it, and then transfer it, then, sell it, rent it, whatever, and have a contract. But the CIC should, whether it's under the city policy or it has its own policy, and its directors should also have insurance, so that needs to be provided for. And that's just one of the expenses that needs to be covered too, which does separate it as a separate corporation.
So just to button this up, we prepped a few bullet points here, and Steve,
sure.
again, reel me in, I suppose, as I like to say. But so the kinds of things that we've been talking about tonight are sort of a mixture of short-term and longer-term steps that we need to take. The shorter-term steps, I think, that we intend to bring forward to you as soon as May, our regular meeting in May, is to come to you with one, maybe two resolutions that accomplish the first 4 bullet points here, which is to basically say, reaffirm that this is important, it's important to council, we want to move in this direction, to appoint the trustees, we'll propose the ones that we talked about tonight, and then approve the, any amendments to the articles and a code of regulations, which basically, those are the foundational documents that get the CIC off the ground. And then once those approvals happen at the council level, then that group of trustees will meet and go ahead and then approve as well any additional amendments to the articles or to the codes, the conflict of interest policy, and as Steve mentioned, if there needs to be a separate, treasurer, president, or any other sort of officer level positions, that the trustees get that part of the structure set up. Once that's done, we'll be back in front of council with some discussions about how do we capitalize, how do we potentially look at trying to find a firm or a group or somebody to serve as an executive director, whether in a full or part-time capacity. Basically, how do we then get down to the nuts and bolts of setting this up so that the city has as we've talked about, that companion organization that can do things that we can't as a city, but still help us to implement our land use plan and get ahead of some complex development in the city. And I anticipate that after this is all set up, as the year goes on and as the years come, this is one of those organizations, it's one of those opportunities, it's another lever to pull for very complex issues like Wright Point, or the old landfills that we have all over town, or any brownfields that we have that need to be remediated. The CIC can play an instrumental role in helping to either buffer or support those conversations and open up avenues that we don't have available to us today. So it's an important piece of our future.
And it can make things happen quicker. That it doesn't, that things don't have to come back to council, and we don't have to wait 2 weeks, and we don't have to go through ordinances and all that waiting time that sometimes, if we have somebody that wants to invest in the city, we don't necessarily have the time, a time restraint like the council, like city
Right.
council does.
They can move more at the speed of business.
Yes.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
Anything
Steve.
else? All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Don't be a stranger.
Yes, it's good to see. It's been a while, but now, thank you.
All right. We'll pivot back to ranked choice voting for a moment. So, as many of you know, or as everybody knows, I suppose, we were in the process of conducting a charter review this year, which is required by charter right now about every 5 years. Because we didn't have enough interest to formally constitute a charter review committee, we held a series of public meetings. I think one was in February and one was in March, if I'm not mistaken, right here in council chambers. That group has discussed several ideas, and where we landed with that is, since there was no formal appointment process to constitute a formal charter review committee, what we're going to do is take the ideas and thoughts that came out of those discussions and give them to you in a deliverable with basically, here's what the committee talked about, and here's a staff level recommendation. I let them go because we're going to be here for a minute. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. So we'll come up with a highlight about the recommendations or ideas that were discussed, along with the discussion around those. And then, where appropriate, we will have a staff recommendation about whether or not that idea makes sense from our professional perspective, or kind of how we want to weigh in on that. There are a couple of ideas that were generated and discussed where you will not see a staff recommendation, because I don't believe, in my professional opinion, it's appropriate for me to give you one. So an example would be, there was a suggestion that perhaps the city should go to elections based on wards or districts, or some combination of districts and at-large. I can certainly give you my personal opinion on that. To me, that's almost a pure policy question about how do you, as the governing body, think that folks should be elected in the city of Riverside. It really doesn't have much bearing on how staff do our day-to-day work. A similar point that was discussed was potentially moving to a ranked choice voting model to run our elections. And I know that's a topic that's important to some folks in the community, as well as to Councilmember Fry. And so I wanted to be sure we had some space to discuss that in a work session. And I believe you've done some outreach to some folks, and I'm going to forget the name off the top of my head.
Rank the Vote Ohio.
Thank you. And they will be at the May 9th work session to provide a presentation on ranked choice voting, what that is, what it means, why it could benefit us. But I wanted to tee that conversation up today and set the table for it, and just to, I guess, open the floor. So, Brenda, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to weigh in on at this point, but.
Sure. I noticed that Mr. Owens is here, so maybe give him a chance to speak too. But I'll just give you some background as to how we got here. A couple of years ago, I started to have informal conversations with some members of council to see, what people thought about ranked choice voting. It was, I think, the 2021 council election. I was really concerned about, there were 3 people who had started to collect petitions. I signed their petitions, and were discussions in the community trying to kind of game the election and get like a slate of 4 people that they wanted to elect. And it seemed counterproductive because there was a lot of negative campaigning that election cycle. And those 3 new potential candidates ended up not turning in any petitions. I've learned that ranked choice voting can be a solution to the civility problem, where we feel like we have to have negative campaigning. And I'm sure that they will talk about that when they make the presentation next month. But I also wanted to find out what the community thought about it. So rather than bringing forward anything, from my role on council, I decided to take it to the charter review and just ask them what they thought of it. I'm pleased to say that they pretty much all gave an endorsement, whether that be privately to me showing support or speaking in the charter review meeting. So there wasn't anyone there that was opposed to it. So I thought that was a very positive sign. I had reached out to Mr. Owens about what the capabilities of our county elections board were, and that does not seem to be an issue, and he can speak more to that. The other thing that came up was that there is a particular piece of legislation at the Ohio Senate where they are looking to, well, it's in committee. They are considering penalizing communities that adopt ranked choice voting. And so I had suggested that we adopt it, that the ballot language that we use would be contingent upon whether that Senate bill passes into law. And spoke to Mr. Miller about it. He seems confident that we would be able to thread that needle and prepare ballot language that would give us an out if that state legislation eventually comes to pass into law. So that's kind of where it's been so far. Mr. Owens, would you like to speak?
I'll just say a few words. The voting system in Montgomery County is capable of doing the ranked choice voting. As an election official, the ranked choice voting is a more, it's easy, it's more likely to get the most voted for people onto council. The way that it's going now, you don't necessarily, if there's 7 candidates, you don't necessarily get the top choice as being the winner. Somebody might say, I like him, I like her, I like him. But, they get their 3 choices, they choose those. The next guy comes and says him, him, and him, 3 choices. But if I can choose you as my number 1 pick, you as my number 2 pick, you as my number 3 pick. Next person comes along, you're my number 1 pick, you're my number 2 pick, you're my number 3 pick. When all is said and done, whoever meets the threshold of the most number 1s by meeting the formula is considered, that's the first position that won. They've been elected. The next, whoever comes up with the next highest number, be it the most number 2s, would be the next one elected. So you're getting the one who is the most popular in the field are the ones who are elected. That's the easiest way to say it. My co-part here from the board has joined us, and he.
Don't listen to anything he says.
So this is a bipartisan presentation to you, let you know, that, we do it. It is a more evenly spread out the vote. Again, it makes it so that whoever is the most popular, or who collects the true most number one votes, is the winner. And the number two is it, number three, so on and so forth. The possibility for recounts slims down a lot more, although you guys haven't had recounts, and you guys haven't really had a contested field for council since 2017.
Yeah, there were 7 of us that year.
Yes, that was the last time.
Well, and that brings up, that illustrates your point. I appreciate, with as much support as the mayor got when he ran, that just having that majority that is behind you. We didn't get that benefit in 2017.
No.
We got our slice of the vote.
Your slice of the pie.
Yeah.
Divide it up.
When you have a large field, that is something.
So that's, you want to say anything, Nick?
Yeah. Thank you for your time tonight. Nick Bresky, the Montgomery County Board of Elections. I am Dave's counterpart from the other party. I will just say this, that one of the big challenges that municipalities have with elections are costs. It's another expense that you guys have. Now, I know Riverside doesn't have any primaries. However, there are other municipalities in Montgomery County that have primaries. That's going to, first things first, it's great that you guys are having this conversation, and what excites me about it is that it could be a leader for other municipalities in reducing some of the costs. We put a significant, and hey, we'll be there and we'll put on primaries, but they are additional costs to taxpayers. The other big costs that we have are recounts, and I think this solves a problem with recounts. In the fact that we are going to sort out and we are going to get closer, we are going to get candidates that come closer to a majority threshold and closer to a majority vote. A little history about ranked choice voting. This isn't anything new. Ranked choice voting was something that was pioneered in the city of Cincinnati. The city of Cincinnati had ranked choice voting probably from about the 1920s to the 1960s. The great thing about ranked choice voting in the city of Cincinnati is you had a very diverse amount of political ideologies in the city, whereas in larger cities you kind of tend to see one party. In suburbs you kind of tend to see the other party. You see a diversity of ideological opinions, and those ideological opinions are almost forced to work together because it's hard for someone to achieve a pure majority in that regard. The mechanism of how ranked choice voting is done kind of guarantees that. With the contentious environments that we have on a national scale, I think that municipalities could lead in this with ranked choice voting. The other thing when it comes to parties is parties can also adopt ranked choice voting for their primaries. I don't want to get into that rabbit hole because that's not your area. But I do see probably more benefits to ranked choice voting as an election official compared to the downsides of it for municipal elections. Obviously, if it were to happen, I'm a former township trustee up in Butler Township. If it were to happen in townships, it would have to be something that's done by the state legislature and allowed, or the same with statutory cities. But I definitely think this is a good opportunity to take a look at it. I appreciate you guys for having this discussion. The final point I want to make is how would the Montgomery County Board of Elections be able to carry it out? We work with a vendor for our voting equipment called ES&S, Election Systems and Software. And about, 2018, we were reviewing all of our different voting systems and vendors. And if you've ever been to our polling places, the big metal containers, the safes, they have touch screen equipment. Those are not voting machines. Those are actually ballot marking devices where they mark a paper ballot. And when we chose the vendors, ES&S, we never had any idea that ranked choice voting would even become a discussion in Montgomery County. But one of the selling points that they were selling on their system is that they were the only entity that has done ranked choice voting elections in the United States with their equipment, and they did it successfully. Cambridge, Massachusetts is their client. They had ranked choice voting in their elections. Now, more and more communities have grown to do ranked choice voting, so I can't speak to that. But I know that I can speak to the vendor, I can speak to the equipment, and I know that with the equipment that we use, I highly doubt that we would have any issues. With that, I'll yield the floor if anyone has any questions. If not, I've made my comments.
So you're not hand counting them back each round? The system just fires it out?
Correct, although, we do have a paper ballot in the case that, state law says if it's under 0.5% that there is a recount. So we keep those paper ballots on hand. If you've ever been in a polling place, there's a scanner. Also in our early voting center, there's a scanner. It has a memory card that just looks like a flash drive. Our poll workers bring those memory cards back to the Board of Elections. They're taken into our tabulation room, and a tabulation is done. When we're evaluating for those second and third choice votes, there would be secondary and third tabulations done. And, this is the first time this has, come up, so we as a staff haven't really discussed how it would happen, but I would envision it on election night. If you're ever watching the results coming in, you'll get the first report, second report, third report as the whole county's coming in, and then you'll have the final unofficial canvass when we're done. My thinking is probably at that time, at the posting of the unofficial canvass, then we would probably go and sort out those second choice votes, third choice votes.
So Cambridge is the first city in the country, if I'm not mistaken, or one of the first cities that adopted.
Well, I wouldn't say that, because Cincinnati and you had some municipalities in the time of the early progressive era between the 1920s and 1930s. City of Cleveland also had it as well.
A little bit more on that. So Maine this year is using it for the presidential election for the first time. State of Alaska last year used it for the first time for Senate and House seats. This is how you ended up with, they have one seat in the House. So you had a Democrat in one and a Republican in the Senate. So it creates those situations where it's more representative to people's interests, right? For us, what we'd be looking at here, the threshold that we talk about for the mayor's race would be 50% of the vote plus one. For the council seats, or the council races with 4, it'd be 20%, I believe, and then with 3, it'd be 25% of the vote. So you're meeting that threshold to win your election, and then if at the first tabulation that they're calling on election night, no one's reached that 50% or no one's reached that 20%, then they're going to go back around and that second choice is going to go to that person. So I've been a huge proponent of this. A lot of it comes around the national political level. And I'd be remiss of saying I don't like bringing that here. This is a nonpartisan body. I love that about us. I kind of want to, national politics is outside the door of this building. And this is our comfort space where we're protected from that. But nevertheless, there's still benefits with this at a municipal level that when someone goes to the ballot, they have more of a say-so in who they want on this body. They're not just picking 3 people or 4 people because, that's who they want, but you also get a choice of I like this person the most, second most, third most, fourth most, and that would be more representative of the true intentions of the residents of our city.
If I might add, Councilman Joseph, it also prevents a strategy, and you guys may know this, you may not have not heard, plunking. Do you guys know what plunking is?
No.
Where someone votes in an at-large race, where someone votes for one candidate when they have the opportunity to vote for 2 or 4 to boost their friends' chances of winning. And so when you have a system like that, it kind of takes that the advantage of doing that out. You know, I was a trustee when I got elected, at a time where the top 2 vote getters win. And so, you know, I'd have my friends come to me, hey, I just voted for you, so you get, well, you know, you do have 2 choices. That kind of takes that incentive to do that away from that. And I think that the biggest benefit for your municipality is right there in that a voter can use all 4 of their votes. I think you go 4 and 2.
Yeah.
all- 4 and 3.
4 and 2, and then
Yeah,
mayor,
and the
Yeah,
mayor.
so a voter can use all 4 of their votes for their 4 preferences, and they could use all 2 of their votes for their 2 preferences, and we'd be getting rid of a lot of undervotes.
Thank you.
With that, I have no further comments.
Thank you
for
so much.
coming.
Thanks for coming.
So maybe just to button this up, so we'll have another touch point at the next work session, just to revisit this with the other group that will present as well. And just for, again, for context, the idea is to present this issue alongside the other issues that were discussed at charter review. At the next work session, we'll have a conversation about all of those, including this. And then based on that conversation, we'll prepare resolutions to bring forward to council to adopt. And then if council adopts those resolutions, what that's doing is putting it on the ballot for the public. So the conversation we're having today, the one we're having in May, is not a one and done, council's going to vote and now it's the law of the land. We're voting to put it on the ballot so that the broader public can weigh in on these questions as well, so. All right, moving on. We'll turn to Ms. Holt, who has a couple of updates for us. And I will cue the first one up here. Thanks again, gentlemen. All right. All right, take it away about fee schedules.
Yes. Good evening. Hello, everyone.
Can you pull that down, Naya? Sorry. There you go.
Hello. I forgot I'm short.
You're good.
So I have been working with the rest of the department heads to pull together a fee schedule. If you could go to the next slide.
I certainly can after I figure out how to work this.
So we want to transition to a fee schedule that represents the entire work that our departments do. So it will be consolidated into a master fee schedule. It will assist our staff and the community to know what fees are appropriate for the work that they want to get done or for the request that they're asking for, whether it's something coming from one of our public safety departments, from the public service department, or from, of course, administrative department. We are also going to connect those fees to where it is in our code or if it's coming from ORC. So we want to let them know, like, we're not pulling this from thin air. There will be some new sections in this code because right now we just have public service and community development in our fee schedule. So, of course, there'll be administrative fees, if they have a return check or something of that nature. Our records requests, I work with Ms. Llewellyn on that. And, of course, our general registrations, the rental registry that you adopted a few months ago, garage sales, there's no fee for that, but we'll list that, so it's very clear to our residents. Public safety fees, I work with the chiefs who were here earlier. There'll be CPR classes that are being offered for our residents and even non-residents. Those fees will be available. For those who are looking to solicit in our community, those will be fees, and you know what those cost. Stormwater fees. I know that's the topic we've been talking about time and time again in this chamber. Well, there'll be a permit to connect to our system. There'll be inspections for that, and those fees will be in that document. There's also be a utility fee. I have asterisk there because we have in this new schedule a placeholder for that, but until a fee is decided by this body, it'll just be there at a zero value. If we can move on. There'll be some other changes that you will see in this code, or excuse me, not code, I'm so used to saying that word, in this schedule. We have seen from the 2021 change that the commercial demolition bond was just a little too much for our businesses that were coming in. So we reduced that back down to the pre-2021 rate, which was $5 per square feet. We added a pre-application fee. So a lot of the time, we are talking to new businesses that are coming in, and we're sending some of that work to our engineering consultant, but we're taking on the cost, so we're going to try to recover some of that. We have a code enforcement and follow-up inspection fee, but this is only going to apply to those really troublesome cases. This won't be for like, okay, we're going to look at your property. You've already said that you've done the work. It's not going to apply to that. This is those repeat offenders. We're going out there 6, 7 times. That's when that inspection fee will come into play. And for the cell tower permit, it was housed under community development, but actually, most of those towers are only permitted in the right-of-way. So we put that where it belongs, under public service, who oversees our right-of-way, of course. And we did increase the right-of-way permit because for a long time, it was only $25. We have it matching the driveway permit, which is $40. And we clarified the park shelter policy for nonprofits. And if you want to.
And what is that policy?
So it was waived for free, but now it's going to just match the same for whether they're in our community, so it'll be $15. So I have been working with our intern, Mara, on the new schedule, and it looks beautiful. It's not just a Word document. So this is what our intern created.
You want me to just keep flipping through?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can just, so she has organized it so it's broken down by each department. And you can zoom in if you would like,
Yeah, I should do that.
Mr. Manager. So you can see, as I said, the reference to the different sections of code, what each of those fees are, even saying no fees, for example, like with the handicap ramps, if someone's putting in. And I am quite impressed with what this young lady did, taking that Word document to a document like this. She really stepped us into the 21st century. And if you want to go to, I don't know, I think it's right after this, and you can see the public service, where we talk about the stormwater. Yep, oh, that's public safety.
It'll probably be here. you
Yep,
go.
right here. You'll see some of those changes that we referenced.
Does this plan to go on the website too?
Once it's adopted by council, it's not the right version?
What I would say, if you could scroll back just a little bit.
Yep.
Yep, back to,
The parks.
Okay.
So, up a little bit.
oh, hang on, my mouse is being fiddly.
Operator. Oh, solicitor's license.
Park
that's
park
okay.
facility down here.
Okay, yeah, and solicitor's licenses don't have a fee.
I don't know that they,
Oh.
I don't know that they historically have.
Okay. Well, there we go.
Who would you
Oh,
ask?
for a solicitor's license?
Yep.
Peddler's license?
They do have to go and get
Pass.
they do have, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
here you go.
Peddlers and okay, so what's the difference?
Those are, you'd have to refer to the individual code section. I think
Yeah.
the last time I looked at
Oh,
this
this
was
is
a
our
few
fee.
months ago, but the general intention here is that, I think the way, well, I don't want to speak out of turn,
Yeah.
but
I'll have to ask the chief.
I imagine a peddler is more like, occasionally you'll get somebody that has like a pop-up shop that will try to pop up in a parking lot or something. It's more confined
And
to
sell
one
hats.
location. A solicitor is going door to door, somebody who's kind of canvassing in that way. I believe that section of code actually defines these things in greater detail. But again, I think you also raise back to your sort of your first point. What we're trying to produce, and I think what Naya, to her great credit, and to Mara, our intern who's helped pull all this together, is this is, I believe, one of the first times we've pulled all of this information together in a format that hopefully is a little bit more legible and that lets the public know where our authority to charge all of these fees derives from. To the extent that that's a conversation, so we're sort of briefing you about this in the work session now. I'm happy to prep a resolution to bring it forward to you in May. If there are particular fees that you want to discuss in greater detail, that's a topic of conversation that we can have. And this is the omnibus packet that you adopt as a council when establishing all of these fees. So we can revisit them at any time,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
And I can circle back with Chief Robinson and get this like clarified and cleaned up.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like there's there twice.
Mhm.
Also, I don't know if council, if there would be an impetus to have a fee for solicitors.
Well, I would love to have a conversation about it because I was not aware that, that a license was required. And
It is required.
I am curious if there are carved out exceptions for example, Girl Scouts going door to door selling cookies and whatnot.
No. What they have to have, the non-soliciting, and all it does is, it says that you come in and you got the permit and you get you get the no solicit list. And-
Yeah, which is
and-
similar to what Huber Heights does.
Yeah,
And I'm familiar with
that's all
Huber
it
Heights
does.
ordinance.
So,
But so just to kind of take it further, I think for an average citizen, pointing them to the ordinance is not the ideal way to inform them that they need to go do that. And so as we're redesigning the website, maybe think about how we can carry some of these things forward in plain language to really inform the public of how to comply with our ordinances.
I'm thinking of it in a way like a grid.
Yeah.
Like you can pick like what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Easily find it. The license or permit that you need, how much it costs, and layman's term explanation of what it is.
Yeah.
It's, I need a park shelter, it's $10, you can use it for 3 hours, and here's some rules that you have to follow.
Yeah, there's a lot of,
The solicitor's license, yes, Girl Scouts need to get one.
Mhm.
Here's how you do it. This is why, if you don't have one, like, something like that. And I think there's a huge necessity, especially around the soliciting, to blast this out to the community, because residents don't know this.
Yeah.
I was kind of wishy-washy. I thought we had something to where if someone came up to my door and was trying to switch, like what happened a couple weeks ago, someone from a gas company came in and kind of schmoozed my grandmother-in-law over, told her a lie about what they were going to do for her energy bill, and then she ended up in a terrible situation which took forever to get her backed out of. That person should have a soliciting license. Yes, they can still do that. They can still conduct business in the city, but they need to take that extra step to go, like, verify themselves with City Hall. And just that step alone would deter kind of a lot of malfeasance, some bad actors from going door to door, if we have that in place and enforced.
Are all of these fees payable online? Or are any of them?
some of them are, yes. So if they are connected to our permitting system,
Mhm.
so that's most of the community development or public service fees, those are connected, and they can be paid online.
So I would also ask if we could chart a course where perhaps with the website redesign, or maybe, something more long-term, chart a course to where we can make online payments more the standard.
But would that be coming with the stormwater, with SSI, and that platform you're getting with them?
Probably not, in the sense that the utility billing would be separate. It would be that, we could use utility billing software to collect any fee that would be assignable to a particular parcel for, a specific service or a specific period of time. So think like trash. We could do trash, we could do stormwater, potentially, in theory, even like street lighting, although we have the ability to have the county assess that for us now. Individual permits, like the ones we're talking about, or even some of these things that you'll see, I think I just breezed by it, but like where we require a deposit from a developer, if for development review, you've got to come in and put some money down, $2,500 for like a bank account that we bill against when we do our reviews.
Yeah, most of them, or if they're out of town, they can call online and pay over the phone with a credit card as well. That's an option.
So I'm getting fancy, because I like, this document looks good, so I appreciate the time that they put into this. But at some point, could it even, this develop into something that we put on our site to where like, the ordinance is a link to, they can click on, could be a link to the code. Where it says new single-family residential construction, they could almost click over that, and that explains kind of what does that mean. And then if they could pay it online, then they could click that link, and that would take them to the application to pay, to fill all that out. To kind of make it a little bit more interactive. I mean, this looks great, and a heck of a lot better than what we've had.
Yes.
So, but as I'm thinking, 21st century, right?
Yeah.
You know, looking at that, you know, those are things eventually I think we could develop that into.
I want to caution you all because one of our next steps is to go to updating our code. And so I don't want to link to and just mess with this too much.
Once we get to that
Yes,
point, is
yes.
what I mean. I'm not
Okay,
saying
okay,
right now. I'm
yeah.
not saying tomorrow.
Yes,
When we get
yes.
to the point where we
Yeah.
feel comfortable in doing that. But I think that could be something,
Down the line.
yeah, tomorrow.
So you're not able to pay for park reservations online? I thought that was part of what was coming with the website.
Well, I don't know about the specific capabilities of the revised platform, that website platform. We can talk about what that may be able to
Specifically, if you're
collect.
going to start doing anything like that, you're going to have to get a platform that takes payments.
Yeah, they're
You're going to be
just
paying
a,
for something additional.
Right.
This is a separate conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe a Stripe integration. I would assume they would have something.
I don't know anything about that. I just know that that's a completely separate conversation.
and we can have that conversation. I think for the purposes of our discussion tonight, what I mostly wanted to do is, and in working with Naya and Mara as well, is just to show you that as far as initial steps, I think what we can do is, having heard some of the feedback tonight, I'll just throw this back up here again real quick. So like what we can do is, for example, where you see these ordinance numbers, I think we can certainly keep those references, but maybe expand those columns and add a little bit, some snippets of the code or a little summary that just explains, hey, here's what this is. You might need this permit if, and kind of add a little bit of context there. And then probably we can show this to you again at the May work session. We're not necessarily in a super time crunch to adopt this, but the goal would be to have you adopt this as our master omnibus of current rates for applicable fees. And then as we've been discussing, as we move forward with the website and we move forward with the code rewrites and everything else, this basically becomes a living document that we can continue to iterate on, put into a web format, try to encourage where we can, especially for, I'm thinking more of like customers who come in for more over-the-counter kinds of permits, like a park shelter permit or those things that aren't super intensive, to do more online payment and that kind of thing. So yes, and I know that's a priority for Kim as well, not to put words in her mouth, but electronic funds are well, I would say they're the wave of the future, but they're really the wave of the present, and so we're going to catch up.
Yeah.
Actually, they're
Correct.
past.
But insofar as, I think this is helpful, because what we'll do is we can ask Mara to start working on some of those adjustments to this document, and then I'll plan on bringing it back to you in May.
Should be
And
tomorrow.
then we'll look at having you adopt it sometime in June or after that conversation.
And thank her for us for putting that together, because it does look really good. So, and for the work, obviously, you
Yep.
put into it, but,
We're glad to have her.
yeah.
You want to do Glendine next?
Move on.
All right.
All I will say is, somebody knocks at my door, the first thing I ask them is, where's your permit?
Yeah.
And that usually turns them around and they're gone.
What they usually say is, my buddy has it, he's over on the other street.
Oh, well, see you later.
I mean, laws are great. They have to be known and enforceable. So.
And there has to be some
Consequence?
consequence if they don't follow it.
Right. So, I think that's.
And there has to be a definition of what is
Mm-hmm.
what.
Yeah.
Like a solicitor is someone that is selling something.
Yeah.
Door to
Somebody
door.
that is just passing out flyers is not a solicitor, so.
Well, you're soliciting signatures.
You
No.
don't think that's a solicitor?
You're soliciting them an action, not a.
Yeah.
You're not soliciting.
Well, I don't want to,
claims.
I don't want to.
It's a day for another
belabor-
conversation.
Another
Fodder for
conversation.
I don't wanna belabor the
clarification.
conversation.
We went
That's
through
for the
this
chief.
I will tell you that if you do, I checked while everybody was talking. If you do go out to look at the code and you pull up the vendor solicitor permit section, each one of those terms is defined, peddlers, solicitors, and vendors, and it gives some general direction about who qualifies as what. Incidentally, that code also says that no fees will be charged under that section for any of those kinds of licenses. So we'll bring you this resolution that adopts a fee of $0 pursuant to that code. If you ever wanted to charge a fee for that, or a future city council did, that would be fine. We would just have to have you pass an ordinance and then update the resolution, so.
Okay, move on.
Moving on to, we'll go to Glenn Dean, so I'll turn it over to Naya again. Go for it.
Yes. So this is an aerial of the parcel that we're talking about. It is approximately 10 acres. If you want to go past this, it is a 99-unit development of townhomes that would be for sale. The developer has asked for us to consider possible support for this project. One of those is this parcel that the city owns. He needs a larger stormwater basin to capture some of the runoff. One reason that staff is recommending selling this parcel to the applicant is, yes, it would support this development, but it would also help to improve some of the flooding issues that are happening in the community that you see behind that, the neighborhood, Durant, Planters. It won't solve the issues that are there, but it will improve it. So you can see the basin to the north, or like, yes, right there, that is being proposed, should the city agree to sell that parcel, and it takes up most of that parcel. So this is some of the draft language. As you can see, the first one would be entering a purchase agreement in there. We have been speaking to two brokers to see what a broker price opinion would be, BPO. Lori has a meeting tomorrow with one of them to discuss what that possible purchase price would be. The second one is entering a fee in lieu. So during our review of this application, there was a traffic impact study done, and it was determined that because of this development, there would be an increased number of traffic on Springfield Street, and a turn lane would be required. But since we just put all that investment into Springfield Street, we don't want to do that right now. So instead of doing that, we are going to ask for the developer to give us money to hold in the meantime until we're at a place that we can put that turn lane in at a later date. So that is what that second thing is. Now, the last one is a letter of intent to get the actual cost of some of this construction that's going in. And there's more that we need here. One of them is a not-to-exceed clause, and we want to know what the cost is for the sidewalks, for the stormwater basin. But in order to do that, we want to know where your bids are. Can we get 3 bids of what those costs are going to be? We also want all of that in a timely manner. I'm working with Lori to get the actual ORC too. So if he does, because the project changes or something and it is no longer for sale and it goes to rent, well, that doesn't meet the requirements for TIF funding. So we need to shift gears. So that's the language we also want to put in here.
So just to kind of, again, kind of summarize,
That was a lot.
No, you're good. The main idea here is that this is one of those parcels. You'll recall that just last meeting, we had the second reading about the Springfield Street TIF district. This parcel, this proposed development, is within that TIF district. And what the developer is asking is for some TIF money to support public infrastructure investments to make this project go. He's also asking for us to sell that parcel, as Naya explained, in order to accommodate the stormwater basin there. And I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Naya. I mean, at this point, I think it's fair to say that this is a high level of density that would be for units that are for sale in our community. And if the developer could pull that off, that would be a win for the community. It would be advancing our land use plan, a net gain for all of us. The challenge is that we want to avoid a situation where we're obligating a whole lot of TIF money to make a development come to life when that may not be appropriate. We have to be sure, as a function of the TIF ordinance and the state laws around TIFs in general, that we are supporting things that are true public improvements. And that, I think, goes to this point C that Naya just talked about, which is that one of the issues that we continue to work with this developer on is getting to some hard numbers about what the costs of this infrastructure actually are, so that we can shed some light on what we as staff will recommend to you as an appropriate level of support to lend to this project through a development agreement like this. So we're not there yet. I think what we're trying to do tonight is just let you know that as far as we know today, the developer's proposing a development that we think is substantial, that would significantly improve the area or improve our ability to deliver on our land use plan. And as Naya said, address some of these stormwater concerns. But in order to get to a firm recommendation, as far as a development agreement goes, we are trying to work with the developer to get to some of these hard costs so that we can come to you with what amounts to an actual estimate and say, we think that this development is going to generate X number of dollars in TIF revenue, and the value of the public infrastructure is this amount of money. And if we were to support it over a 10-year agreement or however it would look, this is what seems appropriate from a staff perspective. I think we're all trying to avoid situations maybe that are similar to what the city encountered in the past, where all of a sudden we've locked up a bunch of TIF revenue for an extended period of time, when maybe there were other better ways of supporting that public infrastructure or bringing that public infrastructure to life. The last thing I'll leave on to is, Naya, that, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as the site plan goes, this has already been all the way through Planning Commission, correct?
Yes, it's been conditionally approved.
And what's the condition?
So the condition is that they put a sidewalk in, that the stormwater basin is built, but they want the agreement to happen. So they basically put the work on the developer to give us the numbers. They want to see vegetation, they want to see screening, they want to see that the developer, there's one other thing. Oh, there was a hydrant that they want to see. Yeah.
So unless you all feel strongly, what I'd like to leave with tonight is a sense of direction, that I'm not supposed to come back to you with anything more about this development agreement until I can put some numbers to it.
That's it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Excellent, because that's what I was hoping you would say.
Well, I
So-
just would like to know, what is he proposing the cost of selling these? What is the cost of a unit going to be approximately?
I've heard different numbers, so I don't want to speak to that.
What's a general range, maybe?
I've heard 250, I've heard 300, 350.
For a, like a condo.
Because these would be townhomes.
Yes.
Townhome units for sale with private roads.
Yes, the
Which
roads
is
are
around the
private.
cost of
Mhm.
what's going on out right there in Huber on Kittredge, I think, right now.
Right.
I think that's the cost of those right now.
And they're maintaining the roads long-term?
Yes.
Yep, private roads.
There's a
yeah.
HOA as well.
Okay. And we have any idea how much he wants in TIF funding?
No, because we don't know what the costs are, which is where this conversation is
Yeah.
exceptionally helpful to us, because then what we can do is basically say, look, we're not at a point where we can advance this. We're not going to make a first offer until we understand more fully what the potential cost of public improvements are, and we can make an informed recommendation about how to support that through a development agreement. It's different developers have different approaches to these conversations. I will say that we've worked with some other developers who are much more forward with some of these costs. But as a general approach, what I'm trying to confirm tonight is that that's your expectation, so that I can repeat that back to our counterparts and just let them know. We really need to get firmer numbers before we're at a point where I'm gonna bring you something.
Needs
So
to be ironclad.
correct, or as solid as we can reasonably, arrive at prior to construction.
Well, the answer is, I don't want us to think that we're going to get $500,000 a year in tax revenue, and he wants all of it for 10 years, and he's only putting $2 million into, you know.
Yep.
It's not his piggy bank. It's our, you know,
Right.
it's our piggy bank to do better things in our community.
If you do the rule of three, your property is 3 times, your income is 3 times what your property value is. So you take that, so 275, say that, let's say an average would be 1 to 2 people working to afford that, right? So quick math, 99 units, low end, 1 person working in each house, 206,000, high end, 412, median, 309. Just back of the napkin math, 309,000 would be the impact. Back of the napkin math.
Well, and that's where, you know, that we could make a whole series of assumptions right now based on the various estimated sale prices that have been bandied about on this project. And so until we get, just personally speaking for myself and probably for the staff, until there has been a much more narrow range, I mean, at this point, we're at a place where the numbers could say whatever somebody wants them to say. I mean, on some level, that is the nature of this kind of estimating that goes on. So we're never going to get entirely away from that. But I just think from a staff perspective, we're at a place where the range is so broad and the variables are so many that I can't really stand up here and tell you
Right.
with any sense of confidence, you know, that it's going to pan out one way or the other. So we will go attempt to get that in our conversations with the developer, and then we'll be back in front of you. So,
Perfect.
Has there been any conversations at all with any of the neighbors in that area about this?
Oh, they've attended several of the public meetings.
yeah, the planning commission meetings in particular were pretty well attended.
Yeah.
So, yep.
And the BZA meeting that was held,
Been there, done that.
former council meeting.
All right. Well, thank you, Naya. Appreciate it. All right, just a couple of items left, and I'll try to not belabor these too much. I appreciate everybody's patience. So I did want to comment just briefly a little bit on the police property tax levy and sort of next steps as far as that's concerned. So the first thing where I kind of want to start with this is, again, council recently adopted formally the 2024 budget book. So that's the pretty explanation for the budget ordinance that was adopted last December. Our venerable clerk/communications manager has ensured that that has been posted to the city's website. So you'll see it on the finance page. And of course, as we update the website, you know, we will be sure that it gets listed on the new website as well. But if you go to the finance page, it's down about halfway through. There's if my mouse will cooperate, there's a section for current year budget, and there's a link here that you can click to. That link will take you straight out to the ClearGov portal, where our adopted budget book lives. So just to set the table on this conversation, I think it's important, what we're looking at right now is the general fund. When communities get in trouble with the auditor, it is usually because they don't have enough money in the general fund. Something's wrong in the general fund. For example, one of the red flags with the auditor is if you have less than 2 months of operating expenses, that's a problem. They're going to come in and run your books, right? All right, to be very clear, we're not at that position right now. But where we are in the 2024 budget is we are not running a budget that is solvent. And we talked about this during the budget workshops last year, so this is not news, I think, to folks that have been following along at home. The 2024 budget was adopted before we had negotiated and finalized the police contracts. And so there are additional salary expenses that are not included in this number. And we have not even really started yet on the fire contract. That is due in July. Any increases that come out of that contract are also not in this number. So since the day I got here, the effort has been to try to get us to a balanced budget. We're well on our way to that, but we're not quite there yet. And so we will continue to sort of work through some of these problems. The reason that's important is because you'll see a number here under transfers, this $3.45 million. About 900,000 of that $3.45 million goes to the police department as it is right now. So part of the reason why we're running a shortfall is because police and fire are very expensive. And to operate those departments costs a lot of money. The general fund is giving that money to those departments now to help keep them solvent. Follow me so far?
Yep.
All right. I know this is not news for pretty much everybody here, but I think it's important for the public conversation. So if we go to the police department budget, you can come all the way down through here, and we have a nice revenue table that illustrates where money comes from. So there are just two places that I'll draw your attention to. You'll see transfers in down here at $3.7 million. The bulk of that is actually income taxes, because income taxes in this draft budget, or in this adopted budget, go into a holding fund before they come to the police department. So in here, they're shown as a transfer. But $900,000 of that 3.7 is a transfer in from the general fund, right? But not the more important number, but the other important number here to follow is that property taxes by themselves account for about $1.2 million in terms of revenue for the police department. So our thought, and again, we have basically one more shot to try to secure that level of funding at the November election before that revenue will roll off of our books. So, and knowing that, and the other thing that I'll just quickly touch on here too is that, between the income taxes and the property taxes, you take that $900,000 from the general fund plus the 1.2 in property tax. If we were to lose the property taxes entirely, so if the community were to vote no on a renewal for a police department levy, that effectively creates a $2 million hole in the police department, which is substantial. Right now, we have about $4 million in the bank in the general fund. If we were to run an operating deficit of $2 million, we could do that for 2 years before we're broke, right? Or before we have to make substantial decisions about what kinds of services we want to offer as a community and how we want to offer those services. The other thing that I'll just briefly point out here too is that when you look at what it costs to actually run the police department today, and again, this is before the recent contract increases, you're looking at about a little over $5 million. Most of that is in personnel. So you'll see personal services down here at 83%. That's not unusual for police departments in general. It's not unusual for really any city department anywhere. That is a perfectly reasonable number as far as you have to have the bodies on the road or in the detective unit to do the work. So again, we're not in a situation where there are easy cuts, quote unquote, to make in this department or any department before you really start to lose the ability to offer this service in the first place. So what am I saying? I'm basically saying there's no free money. And in the current operating environment where we're already heavily subsidizing this department, the $1.2 million that we're getting in property tax is important on a very fundamental level for our entire budget, not just this department. So where does that leave us? At this point, and I encourage anybody out there, by the way, to go online, check this out, give us a call if you have questions. We have a budget committee. I'm happy to talk about this at budget committee or any time, really. As far as like a recommendation and next steps go, I think that looking forward, like I said, we have another chance to go to the ballot box and communicate this need to the voters and to talk about what this means for the city budget and the police department in general. We are also, though, going to be, assuming you vote to put this on the ballot in November, we will be in a ballot environment that's going to be much different than it was in March. I think we can expect that in all likelihood the schools will have something on the ballot. There are probably other organizations that are likely to put property tax issues on the ballot. I'm likely to recommend to you that we pursue just a simple renewal to try to preserve that $1.2 million line of funding so that we can at least tread water, assuming that the voters approve of that. We'll at least keep the budget where it's at for now, and then go from there. But again, it is vitally important, not just for the police department, but also for the community, in the sense that we also, if we were to lose that funding, not only would we have service considerations that we would have to make, but it also ties our hands as far as what we can do to solve other problems, like the Right Point problem. If we were to try to sell these buildings, for example, but take a $2 or even a $3 million loss on the buildings, which is possible, it's only possible right now because we have $4 million in the bank. So I could come to you and say, you can take a short-term loss on this because we can afford it. If we also have a $2 million hole in the police department at the same time, we can't solve the Right Point problem anymore in that way. And there are not a whole lot of other good solutions there. So, again, just to boil it all down, I think this is an ongoing conversation that we can certainly have. And I have to be very careful, staff has to be very careful as far as presenting the facts and what that budget looks like and trying to explain what this means. I think about that John Muir quote that we talked about, where if you start pulling on one thing, you find that it's connected to everything else. We're living that situation right now. So I will certainly be available to help facilitate that conversation. But as far as where we sit today, I'm likely to come to you with a recommendation that says in November, let's just do a simple renewal and try to tread water for another 5 years on that levy, and then take one bridge at a time.
That has to happen by August.
Correct. I believe that's the deadline for the November ballot. Yep.
This conversation was just for the 7 members of council, because the city can't play any part of this. But cities cannot use funds to campaign for tax levy.
We know that.
We can.
We know that.
So we didn't the last time. And
what?
We didn't do anything the last time. We went on the hope and the prayer that, or at least my assumption was the tax increase passed. We thought we'd get the support that we would to have the police levy passed. We didn't. I think we did not do a good job of educating. We didn't push out a message, and that needs to change.
Absolutely.
And I think we need a concerted, coordinated effort with the 7 of us, and maybe we can talk to the police union.
We have to be careful about being involved.
That's right. You can't. go-
We are private citizens outside. We don't,
No,
as long
no.
as we don't spend the city's money.
What I'm saying is, we have to be careful. I'm not saying we can't do it. I'm saying we have to be careful about which hat we're wearing and making sure people
In the
know.
past-
I would feel better if we had some legal guidance.
Yes.
I was just going to suggest, and I don't want to put Jim entirely on the spot right now,
The
but
Attorney General has really gotten tough with schools on that, too.
and there's a lot of gray and murky area
Yeah.
here. Jim, I don't know if you want to weigh in on it just briefly now, but I also think that to the extent that this is a conversation we can have going forward as well, as far as where some of these lines are, it's appropriate for us to do that. But go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. Yeah, just briefly, was a criminal case with the school district, which I believe you might be referring to.
Bellbrook.
Bellbrook, yeah.
There are serious implications. To Councilmember Joseph's point, the hat you're wearing is very specific, because there are criminal statutes against how a elected official uses public monies or not uses public monies to support a levy. So I can certainly talk more to that in the future, but it sounds like everybody's on the same page. Just be very careful about speaking in support and use what hat you're wearing when you are supporting levy campaigns, which of course is what we want to do, but it's just how would you go about it? Look at that guidance, which I can provide as well, AG guidance, case law guidance on how to do that appropriately and stay out of trouble.
And I know that I will be meeting with the members with our representatives from the police union actually next week, just to kind of touch base with them as well. And so the products of these conversations, again, will come before you, and we can certainly get you the guidance that you need to kind of take an informed approach to the next several months. But look for something from me as far as a resolution to put this on the ballot, as far as just a simple renewal. Hopefully that will help improve the ability to message for folks that want to message, and the ability to just explain kind of the situation that the budget's in currently, so.
Yes. I'm glad that Zach gave me the opportunity to say something, because I have been very concerned. I have a lot of experience in promoting in this community, have been successful and unsuccessful. And we did not educate our public. We did not give them the opportunity to know what was going on. I won't put blame on anybody, but there are sources of funds in this community to promote a levy, and we did not take advantage of that.
No, we definitely have to do a better job of that this go around.
We have to do a job. We didn't do a job.
Right, that's what I was, yeah, I mean,
And I was very disappointed, and even people that and I know that our groups are all significantly different that we interact with. But people didn't know what was going on. It was like, some even went to the ballot without knowing it was even there. And that's our fault.
yeah, there was Facebook posts I read and I
Yeah.
kicked myself, just the amount of people saying, I didn't know it was on the ballot, I didn't know what this was for. If I knew it was for, like,
Yeah.
the police, I would have voted for it.
Sure.
And I know the city can't use its money
Yeah,
to
and we have to
support.
be very careful how we couch anything we say or do, but we did nothing.
Right, but the,
We absolutely did nothing, and it's our fault.
Yeah.
We're to blame that it failed. Not the voters, but
So-
us.
the seven of us can't meet privately
No,
as a group.
no more than,
Correct. So the city itself cannot use money, fiscal resources, to
Right.
promote a levy. But if the members of council wanted to coordinate a marketing campaign, how will we do that if we can't meet except if it's at a public meeting?
we have to formulate a committee. And the unions have always supported us financially in the committees to buy signs, to do whatever money needed to be spent.
The same way that the income tax got passed. You got the fire union and the police union, they formed their own group, and they passed it. Now, we were willing to volunteer to help pass that information out, and they got their information from the city staff, but that's the way you do it. We have to be very careful about being on those committees, especially if there's more than 3 of us. Now, 3 of us could be on a committee, and it wouldn't be an issue, correct?
Correct, there's not, right.
Yeah.
not a
But
quorum.
we need to have the police involved, and then they get their buddies, the fire department involved, and and it needs to be that kind of a situation. We can sit in, up to 3 of us can sit in on those committees, but no more than that.
I think this is a growth opportunity. I've been on council since 2017, and I've never felt comfortable with any time we've asked the public for money, with how we did or didn't handle it. And I think that we just need to be deliberate about it. Get legal advice, develop a game plan in a work session when we're all allowed to be together. And go from there. Like, we just need to be deliberate. I think that's the key.
I'd be curious to see what the city of Dayton did with their levy that they just had. Mayor Mims was a vocal advocate for their income tax renewal that they had on the ballot. They had flyers. I had one. It looks nice. It's very informative. And it passed. And they did a very concerted job of getting that out to their community and informing their community. And that was, it was a collated effort with all the city commissioners and the mayor. And it turned out with a good, positive end result. The city, I wasn't on council at the time, but when the income tax increased, it was a concerted effort from all of council. Everybody knew about it. It was talked about in all facets of our community, and it passed. So, I mean, we can't go without this levy. It's just not, it's a non-question.
Well, and to Josh's credit, he's allowed to put out information, but he can't say vote for.
Right.
And to his credit, the information was out there. He put together some awesome pieces of literature, but nobody used them.
Well, and just to tack onto that, I mean, I think that, just to kind of wrap up, I think what we're hearing is that as this conversation goes forward, because this won't be the last time we talk about it, You know, speaking for myself and the rest of the staff, that's our job, is to give you the information that you all need in order to have these conversations and to do the advocacy. And I'm happy to make myself available to help disseminate that information or to have those informative conversations. But, you know, to Sarah's point, I have to be careful about what I say. I can't encourage people to vote or not vote. I have to remain the neutral dispenser of information for this or any other issue like this that comes forward. But to your point, Brenda, too, I do think that it's a good opportunity, especially now that we have some of these tools. We've adopted this budget. We have more things to show, more tools to help tell that story. That I think, you know, we can really craft an approach that I think would be workable and helpful for the general public too. So, all right. So, two other little quick things. The first is we do have I will be bringing you, this is more of a housekeeping item, but it is an MOU update to our agreement with Mad River for the school resource officer. We have an MOU that we signed back in '22 that basically governs the overall paradigm approach, how the city and the schools will work together to provide an SRO. And in the intervening years, what's happened is that Mad River has engaged the Montgomery County Educational Service Center to help pay for some of their costs associated with the SRO. What this MOU does is just clean up some language about kind of who's paying for what and how these various grants come together to work. So this, again, will be in your packet. If you have questions, let me know about those. But in general, what this is communicating is that we will take the total compensation cost of the SRO position. The city applies for a drug use enforcement grant. Whatever we get from that grant, we subtract from that total cost. And then the schools and the city split the cost 50-50 for the rest of the program. What this is clarifying is that there may be times when instead of the ESC paying the school and then the school paying us, we're just going to get the money from the ESC. That's kind of what this language is intended to clear up. And the resolution that I bring to you will basically say, just make it happen. If I have to sign some papers with the ESC to facilitate those funds, I'm allowed to do that, and we can continue to maintain that split. So just to help the school districts pay for it on their end. And then, of course, we have it programmed into our annual budget as an appropriation, so.
So if they don't get the grant money for a particular year, this covers that situation?
Well, it still obligates the school district to a 50-50% arrangement. So I would imagine, I don't want to speak for the school district, but I would imagine that if they were not getting the ESC grant anymore and their share of that 50% split became significant, that will trigger a conversation where they'll want to revisit the SRO entirely or this agreement, and then we'll take that conversation from there, and I'll update you.
But the way this addendum is structured is that the school is responsible when the grant is not covering it.
Yeah, the school is always responsible for their half, yes. The way this addendum is structured is that they may win a grant and use that grant to pay part of their half. It's more of an accounting thing.
Out of curiosity, how does this work as like the guiding document? The resulting guiding document, does it get folded into the MOU?
Yes, this is an addendum that effectively goes along with the MOU that was passed in 2022.
So an addendum to me is like an extra document that's attached to the end, is that right?
Effectively, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, if it's helpful, I can give you both the original MOU from 2022 as well as this in your packets. If that's of interest, I'm happy to do that. Then you can kind of see both things in all of their entirety. So.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right, last thing, and then I promise I'll be quiet. So, a couple other little things under city manager updates. May is going to be a busy meeting. So we will have a few presentations and a couple of personnel matters that'll be on the agenda, some recognition things as well that will come up. So I think you can expect that we will try to cover those things at the beginning. We may take a short recess and then come back for more of the business elements of things. One of the items that I will bring to you, just again, it's more of a housekeeping thing, but we had a bid opening recently for the 2024 paving program. So this is to redo state routes, to repave portions of 201, 202, and 835, which is Woodman south of US 35. The bids actually came in pretty competitively. At the recommendation of CMT, lowest and best, we feel, is actually Belgray, because they were the most responsive to the bid packet. So even though there was another bid that was lower, it was less responsive to what we asked for in the bid documents. I'll bring a resolution to you authorizing us to move forward with Belgray. Incidentally, we have actually $220,000 budgeted for this project. The bid here is very competitive. That does give us a little bit of room in case there are change orders associated with this. I do think it's important to note that that money is state highway money. So just because the bid is lower, it doesn't mean we can take any of the excess and go pay for the police department. It has to be spent on state highways, state law. So, just to be clear, like, that's how that will unfold. Now, the good news, though, is that that's more money in the state highway account that we can go fix other state highways with. So that'll come before you. We talked about CIC things. We will prep some of those documents for you as well. And the final thing for you is that the Ohio Liquor Control every year invites us to raise objections if there are businesses in the community that we feel have a liquor license and shouldn't, or we object to the fact that they have a liquor license. I'm aware of at least one establishment that we would recommend you raise a liquor license objection to with Ohio Liquor Control, just purely based on the number of nuisance and other complaints that we've had there. So I'll be in touch with you about that location. And again, that's not a guarantee that anything will happen, but it is a way for the council to sort of formally notify Ohio Liquor Control that this establishment tends to contribute to police calls and other nuisance activities, and we would recommend that they not have a liquor license. So we're not trying to shut anybody down, but we are trying to say, hey, the fact that they have a liquor license may be problematic. And that's all I have for you on this Thursday evening.
Are you sure?
I mean, I can keep going, but I don't know that you want me to.
All right, on to council member comments, and we'll start with Councilwoman Cormack.
Just to remind everybody about the chamber dinner Tuesday night at the gym. If you haven't made reservations, please get in touch with Lynn tomorrow. We have over 60 people coming, and so we would encourage you to come at
6.
6 o'clock.
Thank you. Too many things in my brain. At the gym on Valley Street, and it promises to be good. We talked about menu today. And I don't think I have anything else.
I have no comments.
Just a shout out to staff, Josh, you in particular, for coordinating all the efforts for the sun going away for a little bit on Monday.
Yeah, it's really hard to pull the moon into place, but I did my best.
You did
Well
your
done,
best.
very well done.
I wanted to keep it there for longer,
You
but
did a
you
good
know,
job.
I mean,
NASA would have
Long
complained.
enough, Josh. Come on.
Right.
I mean, the view was good. You kept the weather away. Traffic wasn't bad.
Weather was perfect.
So there was a couple clouds. Had to complain. Salary negotiations. But no, it was great. Josh, staff did a fantastic job. It was much ado about nothing, and not to say that we shouldn't have done this, but the fact that we were prepared, the fact that it could have been a lot more people. We had the staff in place, and it went off without a hitch, and that doesn't happen without proper planning and preparation. So thank you for that, and that's all I have.
Kind of piggyback on what Zach said, but thank you to everybody for all that organization putting it together. And contrary to belief, I know that people said there was negative Facebook posts about the emergency order we put in place, but there was a lot of positive comments out there of thanking the city for what they did and what you have done. There was a positive out there, so we do appreciate all the time and effort that you put in, as well as public service and police and fire, because I know it was a lot. And I know they unfortunately had to sacrifice while we were enjoying things, had the opportunity, a lot of us had the opportunity to enjoy with our families. They were out here, making sure we're safe. So thank you for that. We appreciate it.
I have been a big believer in community builders in our community. A city doesn't run on its own. We are comprised of the people who step up and do the work. Members of council are a big example of that. But above and beyond that are the people who do things without the notoriety or the salary. And one of those people is Mr. Brown's wife, the proprietor, Mr. Brown's wife, the proprietor of the little library, Bibbidi Bobbidi Books. And I just want to publicly thank her for all of the work she does to build community in Riverside and being a blessing to all of us. And I am grateful that the police department is actively investigating the theft, and I don't believe this is the first one.
Unfortunately, no.
And I just want to encourage her and encourage everyone at home to just reach out to her and thank her for the work that she does. That's all.
I appreciate that very much, and I'll be sure she hears that. So it's a blessing. Thank you.
She's not watching you tonight?
She might have tuned out after the first hour or so.
I just want to thank staff again for everything that on Monday, because, like everybody else said, it went off without a hitch, and that doesn't happen automatically. And it would be nice if we could have that many fire department people and police department people on staff all the time, but we're not going to be able to get that if we don't get the levies passed. So we need to work on that too. With that, I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the reasons on the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
No.
Nope.
Oh, yeah, sorry, roll call, sorry.
Mr. Denning?
Yes.
I'll get it down, I promise.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Fry?
Yes.
Ms. Lomatch?
Yes.
Mayor Wayne, or Mr. Maxfield?
Yes.
Through my game.
We will enter executive session at 7:57.